Hey, hey, just in the spirit of answering a few questions that are coming our way, we did a video a little while ago about gear, and throughout our conversations with various people, we've talked about a bit of gear. So I thought we would just do a really quick session about a few pieces of equipment that we think were really valuable purchases in our hunting kit. Not necessarily something that you have to take with you, like a rifle and ammunition and things like that, but just maybe three things that you find very valuable that you wouldn't leave behind. So look, I think if you're up for it, it'd be great if you could head off and create a video of three of your items, a bit of a description and a show and tell, and it'd be great to have a chat about that. What do you reckon?
Oh, look, mate, I think we can knock that together. I like the point that you made about, the kit being not necessarily the rifle, the scope. I mean, that's probably the fun stuff to talk around. But in real terms, if I think about my kit, the rifle and the ammunition probably get used the least. Obviously, when I use them, I want them to be right on, spot on. But there's a lot of components to my hunting kit that are the things that I use day in, day out. So through the magic of video editing, let's jump into my video response to your question of the three pieces of kit I regard as most important to me.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
So Ian tasked me with picking three pieces of gear that have been instrumental to my hunting. I could have started with rifles and scopes, and probably next time I will. But if I was to be honest about what's carried me through most of my hunting adventures over the last 15 years, it's probably these three items. So let's have a look at them. The first item is my Nikon D7000 digital SLR. I bought this with money from my first and second ever published articles, and I'm at currently 118, so it's provided a lot of horsepower over the years for my riding career. At the time, it was actually a run-out model, so it was an old model back when I bought it back in 2010. And the reason that I bought it was, one, it was at a very good price, but two, it was also regarded at the time as an enthusiast or a pro-am camera. So it's got a few features that you don't usually get in a consumer camera. The first thing is it has an aluminium frame, and that's come in handy because this thing has certainly taken the odd whack over the years. The second really good feature about this particular DSLR is it has two memory ports, so I run 128 gig worth of memory, and those cards, split across two 64 gig cards, are very high quality cards, so this is very fast as well as lots of memory. And probably the third thing that I most liked about this camera over the years is it's got dust seals. It's, as I said, taken a knock, but it's also got very dusty and very dirty in it, on occasion wet, and it's never really let me down, and that's both in the UK and in Australia. So it's really been a significant part of my hunting career so far. And at times I'm tempted to replace it, but I always go back to the fact that it's carried me through this far and it's still shooting over 20 meg of images. I've got the lenses for it, I've got the setup for it, and I actually know how to use it pretty comfortably, so I think I'll stick around for a while yet. The second piece is this particular knife. Again, I've had this knife for a few years. Depending on how you like to pronounce the brand, it's a Falkneven or a Falkneven. I've even heard it called a Falkneven. And the model, again, depending how you like to pronounce these things, is either an Idun or Idun. Now, when I bought this knife, it was expensive. In fact, it was the most expensive knife I ever bought, and it was around $250. they now retail for over $600 and they're getting close to $700. So I made a good investment. For a hunting knife, it's really what I want from a hunting knife, and I have tried to replace this, and in fact I've bought other knives over the years to give them a bit of a test run or a comparison, but I always keep coming back to this knife. The only really downside of this particular knife is the sheath. It's a traditional leather hanging sheath, and so really I don't think that's particularly good for hunting because it's a bit flappy. So this particular knife stays in my pack. But very good mate and up and coming knife maker Mick Webb is helping me make a Kydex sheath, so I'm hoping that soon I'll be able to have this on my belt or on my pack. As you can see, stack leather handle, very, very simple straight line. It's actually quite a thick blade for a hunting knife. There's actually a few things that kind of make this from a specifications point of view not a really good hunting knife, i.e. the blade's a little bit thick, it's a bit square, leather handle, but I tell you something, I haven't found anything better. In the hand, this is the hunting knife for me. The final bit of kit that's seen me a long way in my hunting career is these particular boots. Now, these are made by the Red Wing Shoe Company in the USA, and the particular brand, because Red Wing have a number of brands, is Irish Setter. So these are Irish Setter wing boots or shooter boots. When I first bought them, I think they were called Uplands, but I think the later models have just become shooting or wing shooting boots. What's really special about these things is these were the first pair of dedicated hunting boots I've ever owned. Before that, I bought hiking boots. These were really meant for a hunting application. What makes them so great is a few really important features. One is they're incredibly comfortable. This moccasin design, as you can see, is very different to a traditional hiking boot. So it's got this quite broad seam here, and it's also got another seam on the toe cap. So they're really comfortable on your feet. You can wear these all day, every day, and at the end of the day, your feet are fine. You might be worn out, but your feet are fine. The other thing is they're actually very, whilst they don't look like it, they've got great water repellency, or they're waterproof. They're actually lined, and the lining comes right up and really seals out your foot. The other, I suppose, important part is they use a ripple sole, or what was once a ripple sole, with a very shallow heel. So these are very quiet boots. They're more like running shoes in that instance. The downside is they're not great on hills. They don't lace up particularly tight. They're not designed to. So they can move a little around. Your foot can move a little around in them. But generally, if you're using these out west, you're using these, in central New South Wales, where you're not spending a lot of time in the hills, I haven't found a better, more reliable and more comfortable boot yet. So my Irish Setters are part 3, or the third item in my hunting kit that I've used most over the last 15 or so years. So over to you, Ian.
Go.
All right, that was excellent, Mark. 3 great pieces of kit. I think you've actually stolen my thunder on a couple of them, so I'm going to have to think really hard about a few extra ones when I have a crack at this. But let's have a quick chat about that camera. How long did you say you'd had it?
I think, and it's a question is I think I got it in 2009 or 2010 because I bought it with my second article. The first article didn't give me enough money, but with both of them, I got very close to buying, and I paid the extra and picked it up. And at the time, I bought the camera body and a lens. That was the first time I'd ever done that too. So I didn't buy like a kit. I went in there, bought the body, and then bought a lens to start with. over the years I've bought plenty more lenses to go with it, but it was really that approach from the very beginning.
Yeah, right. Well, I took a mental note when I was watching it that I should take up writing stories, because if you can pull a camera out of the bag, then that's not bad wages for a couple of stories into a magazine.
Yeah, look, you won't. I make a joke that, you know, if I retire, I'm going to retire to a caravan. But look, it's my writing has been a big funding tool to my hunting. That's for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right. So then on that camera, you said you picked up one lens. Do you think if you were going to buy a camera for hunting, that there'd be if you could only buy a single lens, what style of lens would you be looking at?
Oh, wow.
For hunting, thinking
yeah,
about potential zooms and wide angles, and not going to be looking at mushrooms. Maybe we're looking at mushrooms, but more deer.
In a way, and this might not give you the best answer, but in a way, if I was going to buy a camera purely for my own hunting, I probably wouldn't buy a DSLR. I'd probably buy one of the what they call the transition cameras, which are the ones that have a DSLR style body but have the very wide zoom application. I know Canon make one. I think it's the SX range, and Nikon make one too. I can't remember the name of the range, but you get that really big built-in camera zoom function. If I was going to just be taking stuff for myself, maybe posting on social media and things like that, I'd actually go for something like that. One of the downsides of getting a camera that requires different lenses is obviously the cost and the matching the lens to the activity, but the upside is you always get the best outcome. And remember, I was buying a camera to produce high res for print quality outcomes. So for me, that was a very different application. And what it means is often I'm carrying two lenses. Yep. I carry a strange enough, I picked up a secondhand, pretty cheap lens that sits on the camera most time. I think it's like an 18 to 80 or something like that, which gives me very good, portraiture, gives me some what they call the B-roll, so background imagery and scenes and setting images. And I have a 200 that I can put a double on. It'll give me a 400 lens for long distance wildlife shooting.
Yeah, great. I don't think that those big cameras that you were talking about were around probably when you purchased that one, the big super zoom cameras that you see nowadays. But certainly, yeah, if I was to buy my camera again, I'd probably look very closely at one of those. Although I did pick one up the other day. They are very heavy. It is a big piece of equipment, so it's a bit of a trade-off. I ended up buying a Canon mirrorless camera, which is a DSLR style camera, but it's a much smaller body, but it has all of those functions. And I was able to buy an adapter to move my old Canon lenses across. Yep. So I was able to keep all of those, which was great. One thing about the camera, before we move on though, that I was sort of going to talk about when I was talking about some items, but just didn't quite make the grade, but it was the little Peak Design clip. I don't know if you've seen those. It's a little clip that goes on the bottom of your camera to have a nice, easy mount on your shoulder strap. And it's been the best way to carry a camera for me for the last couple of years when I'm trying to get really quick photos or video. So anyway, another tip there, little Peak Design clip makes life easy.
Well, I actually run a Peak Design clip.
There you go.
I've done the first one, the Gen 1. I actually was looking, the reason I know it's Gen 1 because I was looking at them, I wanted to buy a second base plate, and they've changed the style slightly, so the old base plates don't fit. So yeah, I totally agree. I used to run the Peak Design on a harness for backpack for a long time, and just have the camera sitting there. And even with the big lens, and you spoke about weight, well, nothing weighs more than a DSLR with a 200 or 400 mil lens on it. They're just super heavy. That's the downside of them. Even that would be okay. It would hold that up if you had your sternum strap, so it didn't sag too much. But yeah, certainly those Peak Design, and I've now fitted that to my new pack. and I've actually gone a bit different. I actually hang the little spotting scope off it now, carrying the camera, and I've got the tripod in the backpack. I've got the camera in my hand, which is now a digital camera, so as in a digital movie camera or camcorder.
Plenty to choose from, but yeah, that's a good bit of kit. I wouldn't go anywhere in the bush these days without the camera. I take more photos of wildlife than I do shoot, so I'd be a bit bored, I think, if I didn't have my camera with me sometimes. That's all right. Hey, let's move on to the knife. Tell us a bit more about that, and why did you pick that specifically? Other than the shape, you said the shape was really important. It's a very small knife, but it obviously fits well.
It's not a particularly large knife, but then again, I've never been, I've never been a fan of the big Bowie. I've owned a Bowie or two over the years, but I've never been a real fan of the Bowie as a practical knife. I don't particularly I'm not particularly drawn to larger knives. I like the smaller ones for the dexterity. And look, that's a 4-inch cutting blade. If you can't cut it enough with that blade, then maybe you've got to think about what else you're doing. That particular knife and that particular brand, I didn't realise at the time, and certainly over the years since I've owned it, they've got a massive kind of cult following now. That particular knife, the reason I bought it is I'm a bit of a traditionalist in a lot of ways. I like stack leather handles. And when I was looking for a new knife, I saw it. I liked the shape. The shape appealed to me. The weight or the balance of it very much appealed to me, and the aesthetically appealed to me. And it was at the time one of the most, I think it was the most expensive knife I ever bought up to that time. I've bought more things since then, unfortunately, but that's another thing. But when I got it, it was like, oh, well, this is expensive. But they have that particular model has just gone through the roof. It's like, I kid you not, it's somewhere like $650 to $700 retail. It's a well considered. It's got a great reputation amongst the knife aficionados out there. It does exactly what you want it to do. That's the best way I can describe that knife.
Cuts things. Stays sharp.
Stay sharp. Cuts things. Gives you dexterity. Lets you get your hand inside that beast and get up inside there. Does exactly what you want to do. The only downside of it, as I said in the video, is the sheath. It's a traditional kind of leather hanging sheath. I've never particularly liked those. So Mick Webb, who's a listener, and I've been playing around with making a Kydex sheath. We had a go about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We got close. We kind of thought, we were basically learning as we went. So next time we go, I'll be going up to his place. I reckon we'll have it for next time. And the other thing is I'm making it out of blaze orange because I don't want to lose it.
Such a good idea. Very good idea. Yeah, well, I have a knife that I purchased, but I have 3 knives that have been gifts, and 2 of them are really good quality. In fact, one of them was given to me as a 40th birthday present by the members of my branch, actually, that came by surprise to a party that my wife organised, and they gave me this knife, and it's fantastic. I think it's the same size as the one that you were displaying, but I find that's the smallest knife I've ever owned, and I'm not a big fan of the big knives either, but it does seem to be almost a size down from a standard, if there is such a thing, drop point knife. Yeah, good steel and holds an edge. That's super important. And you get attached to these things, don't you? They end up in your pack, and you know it's going to do a good job, and they're difficult to replace if you ever lose them. So blaze orange is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right, now let's talk about the Moxons. They made me laugh.
Look, it was a gamble on my point to go for a boot like that, because I had never owned a boot like that at all. And every other boot I do own doesn't look like that. Generally my boots look like what you might call it, an alpine hiking boot. A full leather boot with the lace up, as you expect from a hiking boot. That particular boot was, as I said, it was a gamble. I'd researched it. I'd seen people wearing them. I knew that the style was quite a traditional style. Again, ordered them online because I got them from the States. Was worried about they were going to be the wrong size. All the things that you really don't want to be thinking about when you're buying anything. And they turned up and they fit perfectly. And from the day I put them on, I really don't want to take them off. They're incredibly comfortable. Look, they're not great on hills. They're okay on Brisbane Valley hills. If you get into more steeper country, they're not good because they don't lace up particularly tightly. So that's the first thing. They don't do that. They've got a waterproof membrane inside. They're not lined, so they're not particularly hot, but they do have a waterproof membrane inside, which means you stay pretty dry. They've got a ripple sole. They don't have much of a heel in real terms, like say compared to a hiking boot. So they're incredibly quiet, and they're, as you see from the image, they're a completely different design from what you might think of a boot. They are like, to me, they're the best kind of boot to hunt west of the Dividing Range.
Sort of points to the style of hunting that you do.
That's it. If you're west of the Dividing Range, you're heading down the Newell rather than New England, that's the boot for you. If you're walking a long distance in pretty flat country and it's hot and dusty, they are the boot for you. They just, you wear them all day, you take them off, your feet are fine. You don't have that kind of tiredness. They very well sealed, so you don't have any issues with getting wet. If you do go through a creek, they seem to seal the dust out very well too. But more important, they're just very comfortable. I've got a photo of me somewhere. We were out Tara hunting pigs, and the sun was going down, and it was like 40 degrees, and I'm drinking a can of rum, and I've just got that boot, just looking in the sunset. I was trying to find that photo, but that's it. Like, I don't take them to England; they're no good for England. But if I'm going down to the Pilliga or that way, that's the boot I wear.
And it's interesting because I probably never thought until probably in the last 5 years that a hunter might need a couple of different types of boots. I went over to New Zealand on one of the Southern Alps trips we went on, and I know where I bought the boots from, but I can't remember. They were a rebranded boot that they had, and they were reasonably new when I left, and I wore them through to the steel inside the boot. By the time I'd come home, it quite a soft sole. They were comfortable. They were pretty heavy, and they were full leather. They weren't the best boot in the world. But one of the other guys had a pair of lower Z8s. He went over with a brand new pair of lowers, and he came back without a mark on them. And he did more walking than any of us, I can tell you. So my ones went in the bin before I left, and I went and bought myself a pair of Z8s, and they've been a very good quality pair of boots for the last few years. So I'm quite stoked with those, given that you spend a fair amount of money on a pair of boots like that. So good when they work out for you. I
tend to with the hiking boots, I think I'm on my third pair of Zambolans, which is an Italian boot. To me, they fit my foot very well. They do. They usually one of the big brands up here, or one of the big chain stores, now carry them because of the connection with Mountain Designs. Because I think Mountain Designs was the agent for many years. But I've got them, and I always buy full leather boots. I have got one pair of synthetic hunting/hike boots, and I keep them as like an emergency pair. I tend to stick with the leather stuff. It can be a bit hotter, but it just the wear and the thing is, the last thing you need is to have a problem with your feet.
Oh, that's right. I had a pair of Danas. They were the canvas or cordura or whatever you want to call it, molded boot, and great for the desert. And I'm pretty sure that's what they were manufactured for the soldiers in the desert. Again, once they were on my feet for 2 weeks in the wet, the mold just fell apart, and they just became a flat, soggy mess of uselessness. So yeah, but it does take you a little while to get through a few different types of boots to find the ones that suit your feet. Yeah, certainly once you get them, you tend to just reorder the same size over and over again, because there's no point changing.
And certain ranges, certain of certainly some of those really high-end boot companies, they don't tend to change their models too often too. So you can kind of get comfortable with it. I know that there's I think Zamblin, the GDRX or the GDRZ or something like that. That's the one I get, and I think I'm on my third pair. But the third pair, I'm pretty sure it is the third pair. They're downstairs, and I really haven't worn them that much. They're in a really good nick at the moment. But I tend to wear them when we go down into when we go down below Tamworth. The property is pretty hilly, and that's where you want them in that country. You want a boot with strong, stiff boot for if you're going up and down hills with good grip. That's where I wear those. As I said, if I'm going the flatter, hotter country, that's when I'll wear those moccasins, which are actually, I think they're actually what they call an upland or a gunning boots for for walking around shooting quail and so on, so like that. So that's what they're designed for.
Very good. Well, 3 decent items worthy of a listen to.
So to return serve, how about you give me your 3 items?
Rightio, can do.
Okay, let's have a look.
So the first thing I want to talk about is this guy. So it's not the top of the range one. This is a Garmin Phoenix. I think it's a Series 5. It's a rugged watch designed for all sorts of outdoor pursuits. The reason I like it is that it has a lot of features that we use, and I'll just talk about a few of those. The main feature that I use with this now actually is due to the work that I do with an indicating dog. So because it's a Garmin device, it pairs to my Garmin GPS. My Garmin GPS pairs to the collar on my dog. So at any point in time, at a quick glance, I can see how far my dog is away from me in any direction. It tells me on the screen. It'll tell me whether she's pointing. It'll tell me whether she's treed an animal. It'll tell me whether she's lying down and having a rest or whether she's on the move. So I don't have to keep pulling my GPS out of my pocket to get a quick glance of where the dog is. Now, usually my dog doesn't range too far away from me, but from time to time we're in low scrub or we're in, there's areas of blackberry and things where I just lose sight of her even though she's right in front of me. A quick glance tells me where she is. If she's getting too far across away out of where I want her to be, I can give her a quick command to bring her back in. So that's super helpful on the Garmin watch. We do a number of trips overseas to New Zealand, and sometimes we find when we're hunting, we're in quite alpine-based areas, and they're prone to a lot of weather events. So something I really enjoy about this watch, and it's been bang on accurate a number of different times, in that it'll send me a weather alert based on a drop in barometric pressure. So it'll tell me when it thinks a storm cell is going to roll in, and that gives me half an hour or 40 minutes, I've found, to make sure I'm well on my way back to cover, or gives me enough time to set something up if I need to weather out those storms. So that's a super handy thing. If you're not a dog runner and you just have one of the other Garmin devices, many others pair to this watch as well, you'll find that the Garmin Rhino, which is super popular, allows you to receive the messages from other handheld units to your watch. So if you hear a shot ring out and you've got an agreement with your buddy to send a message on the Rhino just to let you know that, yes, he's got an animal down, or no, that wasn't him, rather than ruining your hunt and having to go fishing into your bag for something, you can have a quick glance at your watch and it'll send you the message, just like receiving a text message on any other smartwatch. So that's really handy. Does the same with the inReach. So you're able to pair it to your inReach, and if you receive a message from the inReach, it'll send it to your watch, which is really handy. So I like that. Some other great features on it. It can basically track you on a GPS and send a breadcrumbs wherever you walk so you can find your way back to camp. That's nice and handy in the dark. You can load maps on it. I don't tend to do that. It's a small screen. It doesn't give you a lot of detail. If I really need to get into the maps, I pull the GPS back out. But it does have that ability. So that's really changed the way I hunt. I'm no longer fishing for things in my pack, and I think it's a great bit of gear. If you're looking at trying to purchase wisely, if you want a watch that does those sorts of things, have a look at the Garmin range. I think it's great. The second bit of gear that has changed the way I hunt is the chest rig. Right, so that's the chest rig that I use. There's plenty of options out there, but I find having a chest rig attached to my pack. So this one here's got clips that allow it to clip onto your pack strap, so you don't have to have another set of straps behind you or running underneath your pack straps to rub. This connects onto your existing pack. This is a great bit of gear. It allows me to put my radio on one side. Usually I have on this side, I have my EPIRB. In the front of it here, I have various other bits and pieces that might be permits or licenses. There's lots of different things that you can do. In the pouch at the front, have easy access to my rangefinder and my binos. Hence it's called a bino rig. I usually put my license details and everything in here, so I've got access to it. And under here, I've got 3 spare rounds. 3 spare rounds. Normally, I'll just carry a few cheaper style rounds in there. That's really an emergency alert. 3 rounds is the amount of rounds that you let off in quick succession if you're in trouble and you need some help. So I carry those 3 rounds. Can also double up as some spares if I'm on a hot session. But the chest rig is great. It takes a lot of the weight off your back, distributes it to your front, makes you more balanced, and gives you really easy access to things as you need to. Also find it's actually a nice rest. So that works in my favor as well. The one thing that I don't like about it is I'm also a fan of the Safari Sling. The Safari Sling, obviously it's a carry sling. It's not a steadying sling. It allows you to quickly get a shot off whilst you're carrying your rifle. But I find that the Bino rig can impact how the sling sits over your chest. So that's one thing I'm still trying to suss out. The third piece of gear that I think is really important, or I'm getting a lot of use out of, and everyone will get a lot of use out, is a decent set of binos. Now, again, I'm not saying I have the best pair in the world. I've got a pair of Zeiss Terra binos. They do a great job. You spend more time behind this glass than any other glass that you carry, being your scope or your spotting scope. So you want to make sure you've got a good pair of compact, high-quality binoculars so that you can stop and look and stop and look and stop and look some more. You need to be able to have reasonable range on them. And what I typically say is you want to have, and people will shoot me down for this, but this is just the theory in my head, is that you want to have a set of binoculars that's as good as your scope or slightly less quality than your scope. That's what I say. And I only say that you should get the best that you can afford. But I say that because the last thing you want to be doing is spotting animals through your binos that your scope's not good enough to pick up in the low light. So you may as well match them up for performance is sort of where I go. But yeah, binos are really important. You pick up a lot more just by taking a couple of extra steps or changing your field of view and zooming in and out of the different depth angles that you can have a look in front of you. So anyway, they're the 3 things that I think changed the way I hunt. And I'd be interested to hear your feedback. What do you think, Mark?
First thing, Garmin, is it Fenix 5? Is that the model?
Phoenix, yeah, the Phoenix 5X Sapphire, if we want to get really crazy. Well, the 5 was not the current model. It was the 6. The 7's due out. But I started my Phoenix watch journey with the 3 and absolutely loved it. Ended up upgrading to the 5. It had a few extra features that I wanted, and it's just such a great piece of gear. So, yeah, the Sapphire talks about its watch face. It's a sapphire crystal face, so it's scratch resistant. But these days, you've got to decide whether you want that or whether you want a solar charging watch face, which is interesting. I went against the solar charging watch face because I wanted the scratch resistant, you know, and it cops a hiding. It absolutely gets smashed on rocks and knocked into stuff. And you know, I'm a wideish mammal, so you know, I donk into stuff from time to time, and the watch cops a beating, and it survives. It's great. Never have I damaged it.
So look, I run the Sunto.
The same watch.
No, I
Oh,
run
it's the Sunto. Yeah.
Because I'm attached to finished products. So.
Well, I've had Sunto gear all my life as a diver, but when it came to the watch, I wanted something to pair to my other products.
And I think that was the point. So explain the pairing and so on, that connectivity a little bit more, because I found that really interesting. To be honest, I didn't give that a thought when I went and got this particular watch. I didn't give that a thought. So give us a bit more detail on that.
Yeah, well, it was one of the reasons why I upgraded. And I was watching a video where, and this happens to me all the time. You know, two of us buddy up quite frequently, and we head out hunting, and we have a deal that as soon as you hear a shot ring out, then you give it a minute or two to let the person who let the shot, you know, calm themselves down a little bit and remember that they should probably tell their buddy what's going on, pick up the radio and let them know what's going on. Do you need a hand? Have you got an animal down? Whatever. It's just sort of a safety check, and it's also good to know whether there's someone else in your area. Sometimes that shot's neither of us, right? But that turned to being able to send each other messages via the Rhino, the Garmin Rhino.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not someone who carries the GPS handy. It's in my pack, and often it's turned off. Or it was turned off. Now I just leave it on in idle mode in my pack so that it can receive a message. But what I didn't want to have to do was go diving for my radio / Garmin Rhino to either make a call over the two-way or receive a text message via the Rhino, because it just makes noise. And if you're on a stalk, and quite often you're both there at last light, you're both putting your stalk in or your wait time in, and you're waiting for magic hour to do its thing, you don't want to be rustling around if you don't have to. So the idea of it Bluetoothing to my watch so that I could receive a message and just quickly glance and see what was going on. And if there's multiple people in your party and there's back chat, you know, back and forth between 2 or 3 people hooraying because someone's managed to get an animal, you can see that going on rather than have to participate, which I thought was really great. That was one of the features that made me move to it. The other one was the dog tracking one, and honestly, that's the main one for me. Being able to just quickly glance at my watch and see where my dog is. Look, I've put 2 years worth of training into her, so she's a great indicating dog. I'm horribly colorblind, so I need something to be able to track red on brown or green. I just can't see that. I've never had an animal run on me, so you know, touch wood, that never happens. But it's always been in the back of my mind that that's why something would happen to me one day, and having a dog with me would be important. So tracking the dog, as much training as you possibly do with a dog to try and make sure that it's steady and it's not going to run off on you. There's always something in the back of your mind that makes you a bit fearful of that happening. And to that point, it's mandatory for you to have a GPS tracker on your dog. So when choosing the products, if I stay within the Garmin range, the collar pairs to the GPS and the GPS pairs to my watch. And when she's in the undergrowth and the bracken fern and things like that, and I can't see her, my watch will tell me whether she's on point. So I can go into sneak mode. It'll tell me whether she's lying down for a rest. It'll tell me whether she's chased something up a tree. That's obviously something for the US because we don't tree animals here like mountain lions like they do over in the US, but it'll tell you if she's looking at something up a tree. So those little things inside a watch really helped me with my hunting. And look, it's just great to be able to see on your watch when you can't see her that she's gone on point just over that ridge there, and there's obviously action. You can drop your pack, you can sling your bow, you can you can do whatever you want way back out of range or sight. You don't have to backtrack or do anything. You almost know that you're going to come over that rise and there's going to be an animal there because she's on point, which is great. So that's a really good feature. And the other ones that we've used quite a lot are things like well, I've done a lot breadcrumb trail. So I turn the GPS on when I go, and it marks me all over the map, shows me where I've been. I can do a take me home, and it'll just give me a direct route, whether that's up and down like this, or I can follow the breadcrumb trail home, and that's great after dark. Just knowing you're on the right track when you sometimes get disorientated, because that's really easy in the bush after dark. So that's a great feature. And also the storm warning alerts when you're doing alpine hunting, and it gives you a barometer drop. You can set the threshold, dumps the barometer, drops its pressure. It gives you there's going to be a storm. Man, it's accurate. It just tells you, and you think, okay, well, it's buzzing. It doesn't look like there's going to be a storm, but okay, I'll take notice of that. Just like trust your dog, trust the watch, hunker down or make your way back to where you need to be to wait a storm out. So what a great piece of kit to do all of that.
Yeah, look, as I said, when I first watched the video that you put together, I a lot of those things I went, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because I actually have the Rhino as well, and the guy I usually hunt with, the reason why we ended up getting the Rhino is because I often when I'm hunting with him, I've got my son with me as well. So we hunt very differently now, and it was that we wanted to have that more direct communication, and also the fact that, you know, my son being younger and, you know, he tires easily. I wanted to be able to say, look, if you want to go pursue something, you go. We'll know where you are, and we'll go back to camp. So I didn't think about that and the watch and all that at the same time, because up to now, I've been just like yourself with the GPS. The GPS is a requirement that I'm meant to carry, you know, and I carry it. I meet that requirement, but I've never been someone who's looking at it all the time and things like that. I'm not that interested in that. So, but when we got the Rhinos and they were able to have the communication and also that waypointing of each other, that connection, that's when I started to use it much more actively. So that's actually quite an interesting. As I said, I'd never really thought about it until you said that, and I thought that was quite interesting. So from that kind of, you know, technology, we go to a Bino harness, which is then a pretty new idea in a lot of ways, and there's certainly a range of them out there. So I saw your particular Bino harness. So talk about that one in terms of your decision making.
Yeah, well, look, I wanted a Bino harness for a couple of reasons. I wanted quick access to a lot of the tech that I tend to carry these days, and tech includes binos. It includes rangefinders. I wanted an EPIRB that was on my body, not behind me, in case something happened. You know, I feel like it's easier to access something in front of you than try and get something off your back if you've hurt yourself. It fits my little child's radio, which is all I carry these days, a tiny little radio. It does the job. You know, it's got room for a map. It's got room for all of the bits and pieces that I want, and it takes it off my back and puts it on my front, and it's a heavy piece of gear once it's loaded up with all of that stuff. It's got a fair weight to it, so it really shifts a lot of the weight to my front and balances me up a lot, which I've always found really useful. I wear mine really high up on my chest. A lot of people wear them down sort of mid chest or, you know, top of their stomach. I wear mine very high on my chest, and it clips right up on the shoulder straps. It's not in my way. It doesn't stop me getting an aim or anything like that. In fact, I think it aids me because I have a rest there as well, which is quite handy. It's just the way it just happened to be. In the military days, they had a lot of that sort of chest rig, and I always found that stuff up high was better than down around your stomach. So especially if you want to crawl, it's sort of up out of your way. It's under your arms as you're having a bit of a crawl along. So so that was really good. Look, I think potentially the one I have is too big. It's like a lot of things. If there's room, you fill it. It could be a bit smaller. But it's not. It hasn't been too cumbersome. I just think I'd probably look around. There's a few others out there that I might look at for a second round of Bino harness. But look, again, having it all very easy to access so that you're not fumbling around in the bush has been great. And there's still room on the side here for that Peak Design clip in my camera. So got quite a lot of stuff up here with easy access.
Now, yours, does it clip to your backpack?
Yeah, there's two different. It comes with a set of. It comes with its own harness.
Yep.
And it also comes with a set of clips and attachments so that you can clip it onto your existing pack. So I've got a day pack and my hiking pack, my multi-day pack. I've got sets of clips on both of them, so I can transfer it, and it just clips on. So yeah, again, if you're going to go for a crawl or a stalk and you want to dump everything, you just take two clips off and your whole thing's released. So yeah, very handy that way.
I got a Bino harness as well. I actually went for a very small style one, and mine actually is, it's its own harness. So I put it on and then I put the pack over the top of it. But I actually went the other way. I went a smaller one. It's only, I think, well, it really doesn't have any real pockets. It can hold a wind checker. You can shove I've got the blades from a Havilland in it as well. It's very small, but I went for that reason, because I actually didn't want to have something. I knew if I had options, I'd fill the gap. So I have a separate pouch that's designed for the unit, which is where the rangefinder sits. So I find with the wind check and the rangefinder and the binos, that's about it for me up there. I used to put a little knife in there as well, but
you're reminding me of all the other things I put in it. I have a wind checker. There's a GoPro mount on the front of it, so it has first person view at chest height rather than around on your head, things like that. There's lots you can do with chest rigs, but it's a bit of a trial and error thing, like anything else, to see what suits you best. But probably the best thing that I mentioned before is that it takes a lot of the weight off your back and puts it on your front and balances you up. And I think that that's very handy when you're trying to navigate, steeper terrain.
Yeah, look, that's one of the few things that when I take gear overseas, I take that chest rig. Even if I'm not hunting with the pack, I just think that having your binos handy is actually a really good way to improve your hunting, because you're glassing all the time. For me, I'm always glassing.
Always.
And it's not this, okay, I'm going to set myself up to glass. It's not just, what's that? Let's look up, just back and forth. Speaking of which, I noticed that you went from the Bino harness to the actual binoculars themselves, and you had them a Zeiss model, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It's a Zeiss Terra. Spontaneous purchase at the time. I probably didn't do a whole lot of research, but they've suited me really well. They're a mid-size Bino, certainly not the small ones that you showed in a recent video. But yeah, they're a mid-size one. There's a bit of weight to them, but that's glass and quality. You can't get away from that. They're an 8x42. But look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what binos they are. Well, to a point. It's all about the fact that binoculars are one of those things that you've just got to have. It doesn't matter whether you're looking, and a lot of people don't understand that binoculars aren't necessarily for looking at great distance. It's for being able to look through a field of view and change a field of view and look for legs and back lines and things like that in the bushland. There's lots of ways to learn to use binoculars, but certainly something that in my early days I didn't use a lot of, and I find now that I use them the most out of anything, to the point where one of the pieces of gear that I was going to review, and I might do it another time, is my rifle quick release clip. I've moved to not even holding my rifle when I'm stalking anymore, because I find that I'm doing more glassing, taking more video and photos without losing the opportunity to take the deer or the animal that I'm chasing. But like I said before, with the dog's giving me plenty of warning now, so I don't like to snap shoot. I like to take my time and put more effort into being perfectly steady. Find the log, lie down into a prone position if I can, rather than offhand. So I've moved to a quick release So it's just one little pull on the shoulder and the whole thing comes off. So it's very fast, but that allows me to use the binos more than ever. I'm almost got them in my hands all the time, so that I can take those 2 steps and look again and really pick apart the ground in front of me.
And again, I think that's a really interesting point that you make, and people might not understand that, is that, when you watch a hunting video, they're glassy, they're looking at great distance. But as you said, a lot of the time you're actually looking, you're looking for clarity or confirmation at close range. There's been many of what I call a stump pig that I've kind of gone, what's that? Oh, yeah, it's rock. But yeah, you get that from the binos. You go, oh, hang on, and you bring them up and you realise, no, you're looking, it's a shadow, it's a rock, it's a stump, but that's what you're using for. And an area that I've been hunting now for the last 6 months or so, because it's actually a smaller block, the opportunity isn't there for the long range stuff, but I'm constantly looking into tree lines, looking in to see, if all those straight tree trunks are actually attached to a body, and you get that from the binos. And so having a set of binoculars that allows you for that fine adjustment is really important, because you actually you're dialing it into, oh no, I'm not looking at the great infinity. I'm actually want to see that thing at 150 or whatever meters away. I want to tune into that point. So being able to do that is really a sign to me of a good set of binoculars that you can tune into.
And something I hadn't picked up until I did a hunter education course early in my time with the ADA was that, yes, you can get your binoculars and you can see further. That's what most people use them for or think they're used for. But just changing the focus ever so slightly to dull the foreground and bring alive the middle ground, or that set of trees just behind the tree line, you can bring that into focus, and then the next set of trees behind that allows you to really interrogate behind what your natural vision would be drawn to. So super important piece of gear, and you'll pick up a lot more if you learn how to use them properly.
Yeah. Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. It's one of those things that I think come with time too, because you well, certainly for me anyway, the enthusiasm to get going meant that I didn't use my binoculars a lot. One of the smartest moves I ever made was going to a chest rig to make it more convenient for me. Because as soon as it became more convenient, I realised, and I started slowing down. I started looking more and more and more, simply because it's really easy to do.
I agree. Yeah, and you'll find areas of hunting, some places demand stealth. I was doing a lot of research pre-COVID about a trip to chase whitetail on Stewart Island, down underneath the South Island in New Zealand, and you might only be hunting 200 to 300 meters from the shoreline for whitetail. They don't tend to go up much further than that. They're right on that band along the shoreline. So you've only got 200 by 1 kilometer really of ground to cover, and if you're going to do that over 4 or 5 hours, you run out of ground pretty fast. So you slow yourself right down, and if you don't have those binoculars to pick it apart, then I really don't think you're doing your trip justice. But anyway, others will have a different opinion, but that's certainly mine.
Well, that's the 3 from me, and that's the 3 from you. So I think we do this one again. We will get to rifles one day.
One day. All right, mate. Good on you. Thanks for that.
See you again.
Right, mate. See ya.